This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So I finished recording. There was something else I wanted to address. I saw a take out there that basically blaming the quarterback situation on Andrew Berry, that like, oh, Andrew Berry should be held responsible for not having the backup quarterback situation held down. And I see a lot of pushback on that argument, and I see a lot of support for that argument out there. I'm just going to put it down where I stand on it. I think that is a ridiculous take. It is also a take that you can only have if you look at this team in a vacuum, because support for the quarterback isn't just who's the backup. Support for the quarterback's the entire roster. Support for the quarterback is how good the defense is. Support for the quarterback is wide receivers you put around him. So if you're asking me, what has Andrew Berry done to support this team if the quarterback goes down? He got you one of the best defenses in the NFL. And that's been enough. You know, getting those pieces like Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris allows Myles Garrett to do things like he did against the Colts, which greatly helped the quarterback position. He got guys like Elijah Moore, who were huge in the fourth quarter of that game. Re-signed guys like David Njoku. Amari Cooper has been a huge help down this stretch. So to isolate what Andrew Berry has done for the quarterback position to a backup quarterback is kind of ridiculous, especially when the team's 4-2 and 2-1. Well, not even 2-1. Yeah, 2-1 without the starting quarterback. Now, there are people who have their complaints. Oh, the Josh Dobbs trade was terrible. I'm just going to put this right here on Front Street. PJ Walker is better than Josh Dobbs. Like, I don't understand where this Josh Dobbs overhyping came from. And I understand he's put up some decent numbers in Arizona, and he had the win over Dallas, but understand too that that is his only win this season. The man's won one game. PJ Walker has played in two and has won two. He has won two more games than Josh Dobbs. Like, the assumption is not fair that Josh Dobbs is better than PJ Walker when PJ has won a lot more games than Josh Dobbs has in the NFL. He's played in more games. He's a better thrower of the football, and he's more athletic. I don't know why Josh Dobbs became Kurt Warner to so many Browns fans. And maybe that's what happens with some Browns fans, is that some quarterbacks are only like become more appreciated once they leave the Cleveland Browns. You know what I mean? It might be one of those things where it's like you really like your ex once you don't have them anymore. I don't know. I've never kicked it like that. I don't vibe like that. But that seems to be going on. And I'll just put that out there on Front Street. Anybody complaining about the Josh Dobbs trade, I think PJ Walker is better than Josh Dobbs. So I think not only did you get a 5th round pick, you upgraded at backup quarterback. And I think it showed. And if you want to blame Andrew Berry for that, I don't really get it, because his job is not just to support, is not just to load up the backup quarterback position. If you want to make sure you have a team that can win if the starter doesn't play, you make sure you build the best team possible. And he's built a team good enough to win with backup quarterback play, enough to go 2-1. So I really think that a lot of the panicking about the backup quarterback position is overblown. And I don't know, it just seems theatrical at this point. It doesn't seem like a genuine, like, I don't know why people are blowing this up to this level. Would I like to have Jacoby Brissett? Absolutely. I think Jacoby would be somebody to throw in here that everybody would feel great about. But do I think that there's that much of a difference between what you could get out of a PJ Walker or Jacoby Brissett? I really don't. I don't think there's that much of a difference that you can get out of a DTR and a Jacoby Brissett. But we'll talk about that more in this video. Let me get back to what I originally recorded. There weren't very many people telling you that the Cleveland Browns would be okay quarterback play wise with Jacoby Brissett. I remember that being a very unpopular opinion last summer. It was an opinion I had. I'm like, hey, he goes out there. I've seen what Jacoby does. He gonna be all right. People called me crazy for that. People told me I'm an idiot for not thinking that the Browns should trade for Jimmy Garoppolo or like Joe Flacco. You know, I've been through this rodeo before, is my point. And I do find it hilarious and a bit ironic that now the same people, and I mean quite literally the same people who are riding the train to make sure that Jacoby Brissett does not get an opportunity to start a game for the Cleveland Browns last offseason. The people who thought that the Cleveland Browns management was incompetent for starting Jacoby Brissett last offseason. The people who swore to you, told you, Jacoby Brissett, that's a disaster if he plays. Those same people are now writing articles telling you the Browns are a disaster if they don't trade for Jacoby Brissett. I think it's hilarious. Because I told y'all last year that Jacoby Brissett be fine. And what I am telling you right now is that I don't think the Browns really need to trade for a quarterback. If you can get Jacoby Brissett, I'm fine with it. I like Jacoby. He's a nice insurance policy. He's somebody who could come in, learn the offense behind the scenes, maybe step in if Deshaun Watson has more of this injury flare up, which I anticipate he's going to have more of this injury flare up, and you feel fine with Jacoby Brissett. But remember why you feel fine with Jacoby Brissett. It's not because you felt fine about him last year before you seen him start multiple games. It's because you have seen him play for the Cleveland Browns and play okay for the Cleveland Browns. If you go back to the reaction to Jacoby Brissett in week 1, it wasn't, my goodness, great job, Jacoby, to help this team win the game. It was a lot of criticism, right? Honestly, Jacoby Brissett took a lot of criticism his first month as a starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. It wasn't until week 5 or 6 that things started to change for him and people started to give him more favorable coverage. So when it comes to this quarterback position, I'm not saying you have to believe what I'm saying 100%, but understand where I was last year. Understand where the people who are feeding you the mania that the Browns need to trade for somebody were last year and how wrong they were. And just give what I'm saying a shot. Hear it out, because I think it makes sense. And I think that people are now doing, ironically, the same people who did this to Jacoby Brissett are now putting Jacoby Brissett in the Jimmy G position. And they're putting DTR and they're putting PJ Walker in the Jacoby Brissett's decision. And I don't think the evaluation of these guys has been fair at all. I think that you can get a lot more out this offense from PJ Walker and from DTR. I think you can get exactly what you hope to get out of Jacoby Brissett out of either PJ Walker or DTR this year. The signs are there. I'll have a film breakdown that points to it. But that's the basic premise I'm starting from. But there's a reason I'm bringing up DTR and not just PJ Walker into this conversation. And that is because I have a question that I want to ask everybody. I mean, I would love to ask this to Andrew Berry. I would love to ask this to the front office. I would love to ask this to Kevin Stefanski. You're not going to get an honest answer publicly. But I do have to ask the question of, at what point do you think Watson's going to miss enough time that it starts to make sense to think about putting DTR in? Not because PJ Walker has been a disaster, because he hasn't. I don't like that narrative about PJ Walker, by the way, that he's been this disaster and that he's been a passenger on the Browns' success. And every win that he's been in, there has been a moment where PJ has made a play or two to help the team win the game. Like, I think it's really disingenuous. And again, these people did the same shit to Jacoby Brissett when he had the week 1 game winning drive to get that field goal. These people have always slighted these quarterbacks until they're proven wrong. And then they're proven wrong. And then they go back and do it to other quarterbacks instead of learning from their original lesson. So I don't like the current narratives going on about PJ. And I'm not trying to say that PJ is a disaster and that you need to get him out of there. But if this Deshaun Watson thing is something that goes on not just in October, not just in November, but it lingers in December and January, you are going to want more of a ceiling on quarterback play than what you would currently have with a PJ Walker or a Jacoby Brissett. You would just want that. You want to have that hope that the quarterback play can be better, that you're not necessarily going to have from a PJ Walker or even a Jacoby Brissett if this gets to the playoffs. And let's face it, the Browns are a 4-2 team. We'll see what they do this week against Seattle. They have a lot of winnable games popped up on the schedule, and we know that this defense is good enough to carry them. So this is a team that's going to be pretty close, if not in the playoff conversation for the rest of the year. And if you aren't certain that Deshaun Watson is going to be available consistently for the playoffs due to this rotator cuff injury, then you have to consider DTR. Again, DTR has a higher ceiling than PJ Walker. I think everybody can agree with that. I think there is a better chance that DTR becomes somebody that you can go further with in the playoffs than PJ Walker develops into that person. So that is where I start this conversation about DTR. I'm not saying that PJ Walker does not deserve an opportunity. I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson is never going to play football for the Cleveland Browns again. I'm not saying any of that. All I'm saying is if we are living in a world where the questions about this injury lingers into December, into January, you're going to want to have somebody you hope have higher potential than that. And I think what's interesting about this Browns team is that defensively, they're consistently comped to the San Francisco 49ers. I think that's a fair comp, right? You look at the best 49ers team, they have a lot of what the Browns have, and the Browns have even more than some of those San Francisco defenses when it comes to pure talent on the roster. I think that is a undeniable fact that they have more talent on this defensive roster than even some of those San Francisco defenses. Now, will they be better? Time will tell. So far, they have. But if we're going to also say that their defense is San Francisco level, you have to look at what San Francisco was able to get away with on the offensive side of the ball. Jimmy Garoppolo, who we know is not good. I know people will argue it to the end of the day, but I know for a fact Jimmy Garoppolo's not good. You took him out that situation. He's still not good, right? And Brock Purdy. And I think the Brock Purdy part of that is interesting because I look at DTR and I see a lot of Brock Purdy. I think the biggest mistake that people made when they were evaluating DTR is that they looked at him in this strict lens of athletic quarterback, right? Like people just kind of locked him in that box, and that's how he was locked into at UCLA, into that play style. But that's not really how DTR thrives at quarterback. If you watched him and what he did well in the preseason, if you watched him and what he has done well in the offseason, he is somebody who works well within structure. He's somebody who can get the ball out on time. He's somebody who can play that Shanahan style very well. And if it becomes a situation to where you know that Deshaun Watson is not going to be able to stay on the field consistently, which I believe we are headed towards that reality, because of the very nature of this shoulder injury. It's not something that's going to simply heal. It's something that he needs to get out there and play with and then see if he's all right. Like, there is just a number of reasons on why this won't be a simple sit him 2 weeks and heal him injury. If that's the case, then I would argue you might have a better chance at reaching your ceiling as a team if you kind of start to adjust the offense over to something that can be really comfortable for DTR to run and give him a chance to be not full Brock Purdy. I don't want to put that much pressure on him or that much hype on him, but be close to what you got with Brock Purdy on the San Francisco 49ers. Somebody who can get the ball out on time, take a couple risks, throw some good balls, and keep the offense going while the defense really holds it down for everybody else. And I think that you can go very far with that strategy. Now, how far you go? Not as far as you could go if Deshaun Watson returned to 2020 form. Absolutely not. But you can go much further than if we kind of continue to do the PJ Walker thing. And I think that would be a more stable way to run this offense, because I think PJ can be that running that offense if he needs to be out there. I think Deshaun can go in that offense if he needs to be out there. And honestly, at this point, I'm not overly concerned about what Deshaun Watson needs, because what he needs more than anything is to get healthy. And that is very much a question of when it happens, and I don't think it's soon. So that's what I think. And that's why I think that the question should be out there of why the Browns should consider DTR.